There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when a room shifts, a conversation fades, an argument collapses. A person who once felt confident suddenly feels exposed, and nothing caused this moment except one thing: your silence. Most people misunderstand silence. They see it as emptiness, passivity, weakness. They assume that someone who doesn't speak must not have anything to say. But the truth is far darker. Silence unsettles people because it forces them to confront themselves. It removes all the noise they hide behind. It strips away their illusions of control. It makes them wonder what you're thinking and why you aren't saying it. And in that wondering, you gain power. This is the psychology you're about to enter. The psychology of restraint, control, tension, and invisible dominance. The kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't perform. The kind of power that watches, measures, waits, and then moves only when it chooses to. And that is why this video exists. This is not about communication. This is not about social skills. This is not about being mysterious for aesthetics. This is about the strategic use of silence as a weapon, a psychological instrument that manipulates the emotions, expectations, and behavior of everyone around you. This is about understanding the dark mechanics of human interaction and mastering them. Welcome to How Silence Controls People, the dark psychology of saying nothing. Welcome to Obsidian Mastery. Here, words are not your strength. Silence is. Rule number 1, the superiority of silence. Silence is feared for the same reason the unknown is feared, because people cannot control what they cannot predict. When you choose to remain silent, you instantly break the unconscious script that governs social interaction. Most people expect immediate responses, constant engagement, predictable behaviors. They expect you to speak when spoken to react when pushed, to answer when questioned. Silence violates that expectation. It disrupts the rhythm of the interaction. It derails the mental comfort of the person in front of you. This disruption creates psychological tension, and whoever controls the tension controls the dynamic. Silence signals that you don't need validation, approval, or attention. You are not driven by emotional impulses. You don't rush to fill gaps. You don't try to impress. You don't try to appease. You exist in your own space, on your own time. This immediately elevates your perceived value, because people instinctively assign higher status to those who appear least affected by external forces. The one who needs nothing is the one who holds power. And the moment you fall silent, the people around you begin revealing themselves. They start talking more, explaining more, justifying more. They try to read your expression, your intentions, your body language. They fill the silence with their own insecurities. They reveal what you would never have discovered if you had spoken first. Silence becomes your intelligence-gathering tool. Their words become their surrender. But silence is more than a tactic. It becomes a presence, a force that weighs on the room. People lean in when you speak, precisely because you speak so rarely. Your words gain gravity because your silence gives them value. Anything scarce becomes powerful. Scarcity is influence. And silence is the scarcest signal in a world addicted to noise. But there is a deeper advantage. Silence makes you unreadable, unpredictable, untouchable. When people don't know what you're thinking, they tread carefully. They watch their words. They adjust their behavior. They begin treating you with a caution they don't extend to others. You become, in their mind, someone who could be dangerous, not because you are violent or aggressive, but because you are disciplined. Unshaken, controlled, and in a world drowning in impulsivity, the man who controls himself automatically controls others. Silence isn't the absence of power. Silence is the consolidation of it. The world expects noise. You give it stillness, and that stillness bends the world around you. Rule number 2, the psychology of controlled responses. There is a particular kind of silence that doesn't simply hold power. It creates it. It is the silence that follows restraint. The silence that appears not because you have nothing to say, but because you refuse to react. This is where most people fail. They don't understand that humans reveal their hierarchy through their reactions. The quicker someone reacts, the lower they stand in the psychological structure of the moment. The person who speaks impulsively, defends themselves instantly, or explains too quickly, places themselves beneath whoever made them react. Reaction equals submission. And silence destroys that submission by reversing the dynamic entirely. When you withhold your reaction, whether in conversation, conflict, negotiation, or confrontation, you send a message that burns deeper than any words. I am not moved by you. And this message is devastating because most people operate under a fragile illusion of influence. They assume their emotions, opinions, and arguments have weight over others. They expect to provoke, to pressure, to pull you into their emotional field. But when you refuse that pull, when you remain untouched, unshaken, you break their illusion. Your silence becomes a mirror, and they are forced to see that they hold no power over you. Controlled responses create psychological distance, and psychological distance creates psychological authority. This is why the most powerful individuals in history, strategists, emperors, thinkers, leaders, masters of diplomacy, were all defined not by the sharpness of their words, but by the precision of their restraint. They spoke only after calculation. They responded only after observing. They reacted only after ensuring their reaction would change the situation in their favor. This is what makes silence terrifying to the average mind. It reminds them that you are not operating on their emotional timeline. You're operating on your own, and nothing is more intimidating than someone who cannot be rushed. Silence makes people wait. Waiting creates tension. Tension creates pressure. And pressure forces people to reveal their priorities, fears, insecurities, and hidden intentions. When you stay silent long enough, people start negotiating with themselves. They assume you're disappointed, or analyzing, or silently judging, or losing interest, or planning something they cannot predict. They imagine scenarios far worse than anything you could have said out loud. This is the psychological leverage of controlled responses. You let their mind do the work for you. In silence, they project their fears. In silence, they expose their motives. In silence, they reveal their emotional vulnerabilities. And you reveal nothing. Your restraint becomes your shield. Your silence becomes your armor. Your unreadability becomes your weapon. Understand this. The world cannot attack what it cannot identify. It cannot undermine what it cannot decode. It cannot defeat what it cannot predict. When you master controlled responses, you make yourself untouchable, not by dominating the room, but by forcing the room to dominate itself. Not by speaking loudly, but by choosing when not to speak at all. And the moment people start adjusting their behavior to your silence, you've already won. Because nothing says dominance more clearly than when others change themselves, while you remain perfectly still. Rule number 3. The silent shaping of social dynamics. Power is never taken, it is gravitated toward, and silence, when mastered, becomes a gravitational field. Most people enter social situations trying to be seen. They chase attention, validation, approval, recognition. They speak to avoid being forgotten. They talk to feel like they belong. They make noise because the idea of being invisible terrifies them. But understand this, the moment you stop trying to be seen, you become impossible to ignore. Silence changes the geometry of a room. It shifts the emotional atmosphere. It warps the social balance. It alters expectations, energy, and behavior. People instinctively adjust themselves around someone who isn't desperate for presence. Why? Because silence communicates something words can never replicate. I am complete without this moment. Most people are not complete. They rely on approval to feel stable. They need reactions, smiles, laughter, reassurance. Their sense of identity wavers constantly, and that instability leaks through their speech. But someone who can sit in silence without shrinking, someone who can remain still without discomfort, someone who doesn't need to fill the air with explanations, is someone who possesses internal solidity. And internal solidity attracts external respect. When you walk into a room and choose to observe rather than perform, you instantly become the outlier. The anomaly the human brain is wired to notice. People feel the presence of someone who doesn't chase presence. Your silence becomes an aura, an unspoken claim of confidence, a declaration of self-sufficiency, a signal that you aren't measuring yourself against the room because you're already centered within yourself. And this has profound psychological effects. People begin speaking differently around you, more cautiously, more precisely, more respectfully. They listen more. They watch you more. They wait for your reactions, even if you give none. You become the axis around which their behavior rotates. This is how leaders are formed, not by demanding authority, but by inspiring it through emotional non-reactivity. Humans subconsciously follow the one who appears the least shaken, the one who doesn't need to prove anything, the one who sits in silence because they know silence will do the proving for them. Your silence shapes dynamics because it forces others to fill the void you've created. And in filling that void, they reveal their agenda, their fears, their ambitions, their insecurities. They disclose information you would never have received had you spoken too soon. Silence turns the room into a confession booth. People tell you who they are without you asking. People expose themselves without being pressured. People reveal their hierarchy without realizing it. This is social leverage of the highest order, the ability to influence the behavior of others simply by existing in your own stillness. And here's the part that truly separates the powerful from the ordinary. Silence allows you to control the tempo of every interaction. When you pause, the conversation pauses. When you slow down, the energy slows down. When you withdraw your reactions, you drain the momentum of those trying to manipulate you. Silence is the remote control of social dynamics, a tool that lets you dictate pace, tone, energy, and emotional climate. Words push, silence pulls, and the world is far more vulnerable to being pulled than pushed. Master this rule, and you stop being a participant in social dynamics. You become the one who silently shapes them, the one whose presence reorganizes the room, the one whose stillness demands attention, the one whose silence holds more authority than the noise of 10,000 men. Rule number 4, weaponize the pause. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it is the creation of psychological gravity. Most people rush to fill empty space because they fear what it exposes, their anxiety, their insecurity, their need for validation. But the one who can hold a pause without breaking reveals something far more powerful: self-command. And self-command in human interactions is indistinguishable from dominance. The pause is the scalpel of dark psychology. Sharp, precise, uncomfortable, and when used correctly, it makes other people reveal more than they intend, while you reveal almost nothing at all. When you pause, you force the other person into a confrontation with their own thoughts. You make them wonder what you're thinking, how you're judging them, whether they said something wrong, whether they impressed you or disappointed you. A well-held silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates influence. A pause, held with intention, destabilizes the predictable rhythm of a conversation. Humans depend on rhythm to feel safe. When you interrupt that rhythm, without aggression, without emotion, without explanation, you take control of the psychological frame. You turn the moment into your territory. The average person fills a silence because they feel responsible for it. The powerful person lets the silence breathe and watches the other person suffocate under their own discomfort. Weaponizing the pause means learning to resist the instinct to react immediately. It means allowing a statement, an insult, a compliment, or even a question to hang in the air. Let it echo, let it stretch, let it sink into the mind of the person who spoke it. Because here's the truth: people fear silence more than they fear confrontation. Confrontation gives them clear rules to follow. Silence gives them none. When someone asks you a question and you delay your response, even by a few seconds, you elevate the value of your eventual answer. You imply that you judge every word carefully, that your speech is a privilege, not an automatic output. This alone increases your perceived intelligence, authority, and emotional stability. In negotiation, the pause is lethal. When you remain silent after someone makes an offer, their mind races to justify it, adjust it, or sweeten it. They interpret your lack of immediate approval as strategic disapproval. They begin negotiating against themselves. In conflict, the pause is unsettling. Most people rely on emotional feedback to understand how far they can push. The moment you withdraw that feedback, the moment you refuse to react, you become unreadable. And an unreadable opponent is intimidating. In seduction, the pause is magnetic. A controlled silence creates tension, and tension is the essence of attraction. The moment you stop talking, the other person becomes more aware of your presence, more focused on your expression, more invested in interpreting your meaning. In leadership, the pause is authoritative. Leaders who speak slowly, with intention, and with spacious silence between their sentences. Command rooms without effort. Their words seem heavier, more considered, more significant. People lean in, literally, to catch what they will say next. Weaponizing the pause also means mastering your facial expression during silence. Your eyes must stay calm, your breathing steady, your posture grounded. A pause is only powerful when your body remains unmoved. If you look nervous, the silence loses its impact. If you look relaxed, it becomes a psychological mirror, reflecting the other person's insecurity back at them. And perhaps the darkest aspect of the pause is this. It forces confession. When you do not respond immediately, people keep talking. They clarify, they apologize, they overshare, they explain things you did not ask for. They expose their motivations, their fears, their intentions, all in an attempt to break the tension you deliberately created. This is where influence is born. Not in the noise, but in the space between the noise. The Machiavellian mind understands that silence is time. Time for the opponent to reveal themselves. Time for emotions to settle. Time for truth to surface without pressure. The person who controls time controls people. And the pause is how you control time without anyone realizing it. To weaponize the pause, practice responding 1 or 2 seconds later than your instinct tells you. Practice breathing through the discomfort rather than filling it. Practice letting other people reach for your approval while you remain silent and still. The more comfortable you become with silence, the more power you will hold over those who fear it. Because in the end, silence is not just what you withhold, it is what you make others feel. Rule number 5, let silence reveal the truth. People lie with words, but they confess with silence. If you want to understand someone's true nature, their intentions, their insecurities, their loyalty, their hidden motives, you don't do it by asking more questions. You do it by saying less and watching what fills the empty space. Silence is the most honest environment that exists. When the noise stops, the mask slips. When the talking ends, the truth begins. Most people depend on external stimulation to keep their internal chaos hidden. They talk to distract themselves from their fears. They ramble to avoid being judged. They over-explain because they don't want to be misunderstood. They reveal secrets because they fear losing your approval. Silence interrupts these defense mechanisms and forces the real person to emerge. When you stay quiet, you remove all the signals they rely on to control your perception of them. No validation, no reaction, no approval, no disapproval, just an empty space that their mind feels compelled to fill with something, anything. This is where real psychology starts. Silence is an emotional mirror. Whatever is inside them, anxiety, guilt, insecurity, desperation, neediness, will rise to the surface when the conversation becomes still. They project themselves into the silence, and this reveals everything you need to know. If someone becomes nervous in silence, they carry insecurity. If they become angry, they carry fear. If they become talkative, they carry guilt. If they remain calm, they carry real power. Most people cannot sit with themselves for longer than a few seconds. They have spent their lives running from their own thoughts. So when you refuse to offer them noise, they are forced to confront the truth they avoid. And that confrontation makes them transparent. Silence exposes lies better than interrogation. A liar expects you to respond quickly, to challenge them, question them, react emotionally. They prepare for noise. They do not prepare for stillness. When you remain silent after hearing something suspicious, the liar panics internally. The absence of your reaction feels like a spotlight. They begin to fidget, to look away, to further justify their story, to add unnecessary details. Every unnecessary detail is a confession. Every extra word is fear. Every attempt to fill your silence is an admission. I am not telling the full truth. If you want to test someone's loyalty, simply withdraw your voice. Stop giving constant reassurance. Stop responding instantly. Stop feeding them emotional oxygen. The loyal stay steady. The disloyal become agitated, confused, or resentful. Silence has a way of separating the grounded from the fragile, the real from the fake. In relationships, romantic, social, or professional, silence reveals the power dynamic. The person who panics first is the one with less leverage. The person who holds stillness comfortably is the one who commands respect. This is not manipulation. This is observation. Silence does not force anyone to act a certain way. It simply shows you who they already are. And when you understand someone's inner structure, you gain advantage. You know what motivates them. You know what scares them. You know what drives their behavior. You know what they hide behind their words. Silence is the X-ray of human character. But here's the deeper truth. Silence also reveals yourself, if you are willing to look. Because to use silence as a psychological tool, you must first be comfortable with your own mind. If your inner world is chaotic, your silence will feel heavy, forced, unnatural. But if your mind is grounded, your silence becomes magnetic. People feel your presence, even when you say nothing. This is why Stoics, strategists, and philosophers trusted silence more than debate. Words convince the mind, but silence exposes the soul. And the soul is where the truth lives. When you allow silence to expand, you transform the interaction from a battle of words to a revelation of character. You stop trying to control the other person and simply observe them. You stop forcing outcomes and let the truth emerge on its own. Silence gives you clarity. Clarity gives you leverage. Leverage gives you power. Because when you know the truth about someone, when you see the parts they try to hide, you can predict their behavior. And the one who predicts controls. Silence isn't the absence of truth. It is the path to it. Rule number 6, the silent aura, power without effort. True dominance is never loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't compete for attention. It doesn't need validation, explanation, or applause. Real power is quiet, not because it is weak, but because it is complete. Silence creates an aura around you, a gravitational field that pulls attention without demanding it. People feel something when you enter a room, even if they can't articulate what it is. They sense a presence that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't cling, a presence that stands on its own. This is the paradox of power. The more noise someone makes, the less power they truly possess. People who constantly talk about their achievements do it because they fear being overlooked. People who explain themselves endlessly do it because they fear being misunderstood. People who seek approval with every word do it because they fear rejection. Noise is always a symptom of inner instability. Silence, however, signals internal certainty. When you are grounded, you don't need to prove anything. When you are secure, you don't need to defend anything. When you are strong, you don't need to announce anything. Your silence becomes self-evident power. This is what creates the silent aura. It's not the absence of sound, it's the presence of control. The unspoken message that radiates from someone who is comfortable in stillness is unmistakable. I am not here to impress you. I am not here to be liked. I am here on my terms. This alone makes people curious. Curiosity becomes fascination. Fascination becomes influence. Humans are naturally drawn to mystery. We chase what is not given. We value what is not offered freely. When everyone else is loud, expressive, emotional, reactive, the one who stays quiet becomes the outlier. And the outlier becomes intriguing. Your silence makes people lean in. Your stillness makes people watch you. Your restraint forces them to question themselves before they question you. This is not just psychological, it is primal. In nature, loud animals attract predators. Quiet ones observe, strategize, and strike with precision. The strongest warriors speak little because their presence speaks for them. Their silence communicates danger more effectively than words ever could. This is the silent aura, a presence that warns without threatening, a presence that commands without speaking, a presence that influences without effort. Most people misuse speech. They talk to relieve anxiety, to fill awkwardness, to avoid judgment, to hide emptiness. They drain their aura with every unnecessary word. But when you choose silence deliberately, your words gain weight. Every sentence becomes intentional. Every comment feels meaningful. People stop hearing you. They start listening. The less you speak, the more powerful you become. Silence amplifies your energy. It sharpens your body language. It magnifies your confidence. People project strength onto you simply because you do not reveal everything. Your quietness forces them to guess what you are capable of, and imagination always makes you larger than reality. This is why silent individuals often hold the most social power without ever trying. Their aura is built on mystery, restraint, and presence. They do not need to dominate conversations. They dominate attention. But to cultivate this aura, you must embrace one truth. Silence is uncomfortable only for those who lack inner structure. If your mind is restless, silence exposes the chaos. If your self-image is fragile, silence feels like pressure. If your emotions are unregulated, silence becomes fear. This is why the silent aura is rare. It requires internal strength. You must be able to withstand your own thoughts. You must be able to detach from other people's perceptions. You must be able to exist without demanding recognition. When you achieve this, silence becomes effortless. And effortlessness is the highest form of power. People chase what you do not offer. People follow what does not demand attention. People respect what does not seek approval. Your silence becomes a throne. Your aura becomes a weapon. Your presence becomes a command. And once you reach this level of self-control, you no longer need to fight for influence. Influence comes to you on its own. This is the power of the silent aura. Influence without noise, authority without force, power without effort. In a world addicted to noise, distraction, and constant expression, the one who masters silence becomes untouchable. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of control. It is the shield that protects your mind, the sword that sharpens your strategy, the force that amplifies your presence. Most people speak to avoid themselves, but you, if you choose this path, will learn to sit inside the fire of your own thoughts without fear. You will learn to let others reveal themselves while you stay unreadable. You will learn to influence with your presence alone, without raising your voice, without explaining your intentions, without begging to be understood. Silence is not passive. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not retreat. Silence is the discipline of power. When you say less, you observe more. When you reveal less, you control more. When you withhold your reactions, you dictate the emotional tone of every interaction. This is how silence controls people. Not through aggression, but through gravitational pull. People cannot fight what they cannot predict. They cannot resist what they cannot read. They cannot dominate what they cannot provoke. Your silence becomes their confusion. Their confusion becomes your advantage. And your advantage becomes your power. If you carry this discipline into 2026 and beyond, you will not just speak differently, you will exist differently. Communication becomes strategic, presence becomes intentional, influence becomes natural. You will transform from someone who reacts to the world into someone the world reacts to. That is the essence of why silence controls people. That is the dark psychology of saying nothing. And that is the beginning of your rise. Welcome to the path of inner dominance. Welcome to the power that does not shout. Welcome to Obsidian Mastery.